I planned to propose to my girlfriend, but then I saw her in a Porsche Panamera, making out with some guy like they were in a movie. When I caught them, she said, "Don't blame me. People gotta move up in the world. You and I are from two different worlds. Only he can give me what I want." She stomped all over the flowers, tossed the ring aside, thinking she found a rich guy and her future's set. Little did she know that guy was driving my car, living in my house. He's just some poser on a loan. When my girlfriend found out the truth, she came back to me, all apologetic. I was just tricked by his sweet talk. "I still love you the most." I pushed her away. I don't take back trash. I let the roses fall straight to the ground. The couple in the car just couldn't get enough of each other until the guy accidentally hit the steering wheel, snapping Ruby back to reality. She glanced forward, and that's when she saw me. She looked panicked for a quick second and nudged the guy next to her. When he noticed me, he smirked, tugging at his collar to show off his neck hickeys before getting out of the car. Ruby stepped in front of the guy and said, "John, don't blame me. People gotta climb up in the world. Mike and you live in completely different worlds. He's the only one who can give me what I want." I couldn't help but find it laughable, yet so pathetic. Ruby and I had been together since college for 5 whole years and were used to being in each other's lives. And this Mike guy? We'd had a parking spot argument before, and Ruby was the one who gave him the most grief, and now here she was kissing him. Before I could say anything, Mike stepped in front and started mocking, "You fought with me like crazy over a parking spot worth a mere 10 grand. How do you think you can provide for Ruby's needs?" Then he gave me a once-over. "Got roses and a ring? Gonna propose? Huh? Wake up, man." As the roses fell at my feet, I clenched the ring box tightly. Just when I was about to speak, Ruby tried to prove her loyalty by stomping on the roses and yanking the ring from the box just to chuck it away. The shiny diamond made an arc in the air. If I'm not mistaken, the ring fell into the garage drain. Ruby didn't get the gravity of the situation and strutted up to Mike, holding his arm, saying, "You get what I mean now, don't you? I'll pack my stuff and leave your place soon." After all, Mike's place is in the same building, but with a much better layout than yours. She continued with an air of command, "I know you can't leave me, but don't pester me later. Let's split amicably." "Amicably," she said. "That ring was custom designed, 20 grand in value." Seeing I wasn't saying anything and instead was calling someone, they were ready to leave, arms linked, all pleased with themselves. But I stopped them. "Wait up." I called the cops. Ruby looked stunned, then furious. "The cops? Are you nuts? Breakups aren't a police matter." I cut her off. "That ring you threw? It's worth 20 grand. You'll need to pay if it's not found. Thanks." In the end, Ruby turned to Mike for help, but he stayed out of it, not lifting a finger. When the cops did show up, Ruby got all defiant, claiming there's no way I could afford such an expensive ring, insisting it was fake. But faced with the real deal receipt, she had no choice but to call in workers to recover it from the drain herself. Back home, exhausted, I slumped onto the sofa. Ruby was gone. The only reminder was a ring, now tainted with a faint odor, saying I felt nothing would be a lie. Back at freshman orientation, Ruby danced at an event, cheeks all flushed, looking so shy but vibrant with energy. Sitting in the dim audience, all I could see was her shining on stage. Afterward, I pursued her, and naturally we ended up together for 5 years. We've had our fights and worries, but she always cared for me. I felt bad for her coming from a rural background, knowing it wasn't easy for her. I wanted to give her the best. Over these years, I gave a lot for her. Even though I knew she sometimes felt inadequate comparing herself to others, especially after graduated friends moved on. Her close friends would share their job tales or what bags and makeup they just splurged on. Ruby would often fume, show-offs. Sometimes she'd take it out on me, saying, "If you weren't so useless, maybe I could afford those things and not look down." Her words hurt, but I understood. Her background shaped her insecurities. So, I'd surprise her with fancy brands before her get-togethers. When she asked about it, I'd say I got lucky with some extra cash. She'd just huff and leave it at that. Stubborn as I am, I even had a falling out with my family because of her. They eventually gave in, and I thought today was the day to propose, introduce her to my parents tomorrow. Never saw this plot twist coming. But even if I'm mad, there's relief. At least I saw Ruby's true colors before marriage. My family stash stayed hidden, and now I'm saved from bigger headaches down the line. So, I hadn't been home long when the property management called me out of the blue, asking me to head to the underground garage. I frowned a bit, sensing something was off. Sure enough, when I got there, I saw Ruby's flashy Panamera blocking my car. Ruby sat inside, looking both resentful and smug. At the same time, a message popped up on my phone. John, did it make you feel good to watch me pick up that ring like a fool? Now, I'll show you how people can really differ. Remember the music festival? I got drenched, and you told me to just bear with it. But today you embarrassed me. Mike won't let this go. That's the difference between you two. My eyes grew cold. We had attended a water-themed music festival, for crying out loud. Ruby stood off to the side, unhappy in her raincoat, but it was just an accident that someone splashed her. She saw me not making a fuss on her behalf, just asking her to endure it. But she didn't see me taking her out to change clothes immediately and holding an umbrella over her to keep any more water away. Did I really do something wrong? Plus, she was the one who threw my ring down the drain today. How is that my fault? Just as I stepped out of the elevator, a relatively unfamiliar property staff member approached me with a sycophantic grin, but his tone was hard to argue with. Sir, this is your parking spot, right? The gentleman over there would also like to park here. Can I find you another spot? I felt both anger and amusement flood over me. Why? The contract clearly states my parking spot. Just because everyone wants a good spot doesn't mean I should just give it away, right? Slight irritation flashed on the property guy's face, but he continued, well, sir, let's just say every spot's worth $100 grand. You just got lucky with this one. Besides, your cars look similar, but there's a difference between a six-figure vehicle and a 30 grand electric, don't you agree? If you do the right thing, this gentleman could be a great contact for you in the future. I rolled my eyes, absolutely incredulous. What? Did I step on someone's toes without realizing? Just then, Mike and Ruby stepped out of the car. Mike dangled his car keys and smirked. Even if some cars look alike, the emblems set them apart. John, you were all about this spot last time. Why so quiet now? Not sure why you were pretending before. After he said that, Ruby looked at him with awe. The last time we had a spat over the parking spot, he simply moved his car after some arguing. Guess he was waiting for his moment. Ruby walked up, smugly facing me. John, leaving you was the best decision I ever made. The property worker chuckled obsequiously at them and then, with a swift change of tone, leaned in to whisper harshly to me. Don't be foolish. You heard the hints, right? This man practically owns your building. You can't afford to tick him off. I finally understood what was going on. No wonder he was so polite to Mike and so rude to me. He'd mixed up our identities. Ruby, hearing part of the conversation, couldn't hide her delight, thinking she'd struck gold. I didn't bother arguing further, just called the property manager, with icy calm, asking him to come down to the garage. The manager sounded nervous on the phone but agreed he'd be right over. I hadn't put the call on speaker, so they only knew I'd asked for the manager. Ruby scoffed, you think calling the manager will help? John, you're naive. Guess I'll humor you a bit longer, though it's tiring. Mike kissed her. Babe, you've put up with a lot. I'll take you somewhere nice for dinner. Ruby blushed. I ignored them, scrolling on my phone while waiting for the manager. Soon, the elevator doors opened, and the manager briskly approached, nodding and bowing as he spoke to me. John, long time no see. What's going on? The newbie cut in before I could reply. Manager, you wouldn't believe it. I asked this gentleman to give up his spot, and he refuses. Isn't he awful? The manager smacked him upside the head instantly. You're still in training and offending people already? Get out. Everyone was stunned by the turnaround. The new guy, likely fresh out of school, ran off after being scolded. Meanwhile, Ruby snapped to attention. You're the manager? Better remember who to stay on good terms with. Don't you know who my boyfriend is? This John is a broke loser. If you like your job, Choose your words wisely. The manager shot me a shocked glance, about to respond, but I gestured for him to let it go. I looked at Ruby, frowning. Ruby, I know I struggled for a while when we were together, but I always intended to give you the best once I could. You cheated, and I haven't brought it up. But now you want my spot for him? Ruby looked indifferent, totally unfazed. Watch your mouth. This isn't cheating. I'm just choosing the better option. Besides, even if it's your parking space, so what? My boyfriend is powerful, and if I want him to park there, you have to let us. Let's not even mention that my boyfriend's not just wealthy. He's worked his way up to a manager position in a company. And what about you, John? I feel embarrassed to say it, but I can't see a future with you at all. I clenched my fists tightly. She took a few steps closer, mocking me. Should I tell everyone how pathetic you are? You went to help at your family's business, but came back in a few days after a big fight with your parents. And then you just stayed home all day saying you were trading stocks. Did your butt get glued to the bed, or would you die trying to find a job? I felt an icy chill inside. Back then, my dad did have me work for him a few days, but the real reason for our argument was his disapproval of Ruby. In anger, I insisted on not depending on my dad anymore and made a big scene to prove I wanted Ruby with me. Before my parents forgave me, rent money didn't go to me, but I did earn quite a bit trading stocks. Otherwise, how could I afford the branded gifts for Ruby? But now, I realized she saw me as unmotivated and totally useless. That's the harsh reality of society, John. Who do you think you are? While she yelled, I noticed Mike's face behind her looked awkward. Then, Ruby rummaged through her bag. When she pulled out a sheet of A4 paper, I instinctively held my breath. It was a promise note I wrote for Ruby when I cut financial ties with my parents and couldn't afford her a birthday gift. It was childish, but I meant it. It was significant to me, saying I'd marry her no matter what and make her my top priority. I'd work hard for the best life for her. But now, she tore it to pieces right in front of me, mocking. When you carefully put this in my bag, I thought it was hilarious. As the pieces floated to the ground, I realized my heart felt dead, no longer able to stir. After snapping out of it, I laughed at Mike. With your 19-year-old car, you're just fooling girls like Ruby who know nothing. If you can throw $10,000 on the spot, you can have the parking space. Mike's face turned red and then pale. Ruby was hopeful about him, but seeing his awkwardness, she lashed out at me. Who are you to judge us? You're just a broke loser. What do you know? I gave her a cold glance before looking at the manager. Seeing my cue, he quickly turned to them. This parking space belongs to John. Who are you to take it? Mess around here, and we'll either call the cops or kick you out. You! Ruby pointed at me angrily. But before she could say more, I walked away from this disgusting situation. 5 years wasted, I'll just consider it raising a biting dog. My dad runs the biggest used car dealership in the state. Growing up with a privileged life, my parents didn't push me hard. My dad's most common saying was, why work for $3,000 when the job market's so bad? Does the family need that $3,000? So post-college, my dad bought me several apartments. My task was to pick the fanciest one to live in and enjoy collecting rent. Once I came clean about Ruby, my allowance was cut, but I made some money trading stocks. Otherwise, I didn't work hard, always relying on Dad. But now I want to change that. When I showed up in my dad's office suited up, he looked shocked. Didn't you just want to live off rent? Why the sudden change? I shook my head, thinking of the things Ruby said to me. I no longer want to be seen as a useless bum glued to his bed. Apples don't fall far from the tree, Dad. My dream now is to take your used car business national, not just statewide. My dad was speechless with excitement. Though selling used cars sounds less glamorous compared to finance, building it up requires serious learning. My early days in the company were tough, but thanks to my effort and Dad's support, I became a junior manager, a branch manager. My dad wanted to give me a higher position, but I insisted on building it from the ground up. I've since moved out of the original apartment complex because of the distance and haven't seen Ruby and Mike lately. But they've been relentless about that parking space. Unfortunately for them, I gave the property manager a strict order. On the phone, I said, unless they pay $10,000 for that spot. Charge them $250 each time they try to park there. See if they dare anymore. The manager responded, "Yes, sir. I'll make sure they follow the rule." Later, my manager shared with me how they both freaked out and started swearing. But in the end, it was useless. Even when they called the cops, the police couldn't be bothered with them. Because of this, many neighbors in the complex got to know about it. The manager said when they walked around the complex, people would point fingers, and they couldn't lift their heads. I chuckled and just saw it as a bit of fun. Today, I had to go to my dad's dealership HQ for some training. But I didn't expect to run into Ruby and Mike there. Mike was in a suit, serving tea to Ruby, who was sitting on the couch. When Ruby looked up to take the tea, she noticed me and was momentarily surprised. But after checking out my attire, she disdainfully said, "Well, if it isn't the lazy rich kid. Did my words finally get to you, and now you're out here trying to earn a living? Seems like you just landed a car sales job." "Huh?" I smirked. "Isn't the guy next to you a salesman too?" Ruby's eyebrows shot up. "What do you know? Mike's the manager of your HQ. You're just a petty branch salesperson, nothing compared to him. I'm here to check out some cars today. Why don't you show me around?" This trip to HQ was to learn more about market trends, so people from all the branches were there. Ruby's voice was loud, and for a moment, everyone turned to look at us. I didn't want any more drama with Ruby, so I ignored her. But she wouldn't let it go and walked right up to me, throwing hot water all over me. I winced in pain. "What the heck are you doing? Are you crazy?" Ruby glared at me triumphantly. "I'm a customer. What can a measly salesperson do to me? Customers are always right. If you dare curse at me, I can get you fired in no time." "You'll get me fired?" I found it amusing and was about to respond when Mike came over. "Ruby, are you all right?" Ruby, who was all tough a moment ago, suddenly softened and leaned into Mike, smiling coyly. Watching this scene made me sick. Mike shot me a glance, sneering. "You're from one of the branches, right? Didn't your manager tell you how to treat customers? Now that I'm HQ's manager, if I report you to the boss, you'll lose your sales job immediately." I stared coldly at them. Then Ruby, feeling smug, said, "Afraid now, are we? But John, since we were once a thing, I can forgive you and forget about you cursing at me. Just kneel and give me 3 kowtows and I'll let it slide." Her eyes were full of blatant provocation. She continued, "Did you ever think about this day when you got the property manager to trash our reputation in the neighborhood? John, karma sure is something." "Huh?" I finally got it. She was trying to embarrass me to get back at me. People around us started whispering, saying things like, "Who is this dude from one of the branches? Doesn't he know how cocky Mike is at HQ? He got a lot of big deals right off the bat. This branch guy isn't all that either. Didn't you hear how he used to give them a hard time? Serves him right. He was lucky to date a beauty like her." The more Ruby heard, the more she raised her chin. "Who needs to kneel for whom?" A commanding voice came from behind the crowd. It was my dad. Many who knew him instantly stopped talking and respectfully called him president. Upon realizing the owner was here, Ruby pointed at me and loudly claimed, "You're the boss, right? I came to check out cars today, but your employee insulted me and won't apologize. How are you going to handle this?" My dad looked surprised. Standing nearby, I signaled him not to reveal my identity. After all, I had a plan and I wanted the best part to play out first. He caught on immediately. "This young man is a branch manager I personally promoted. He's capable and handles things well. Do you have a problem with that?" Ruby was caught off guard by my dad defending me and looked livid. She muttered, "This company's standards are lousy. If it weren't for Mike, your used cars wouldn't sell at all. You'd be finished." My dad didn't hear her but kept his stern tone. "By the way, we have comprehensive security cameras all over HQ. Do you need us to pull up the footage? Insulting customers is a big deal." Ruby stiffened, stammering, "And no need." My dad chuckled. "Such a forgiving person you are. So, what car do you want to see? I'll personally assist and give you the best deal." Ruby wasn't there to buy a car, just to hang out with Mike. Running into me was unexpected. She planned to mess with me but instead ran into my dad, who's tough as nails. Watching her sulk in the corner made me want to laugh. Later, during an important session where everyone gathered to exchange experiences, I noticed Ruby whispering to Mike, looking upset. After that, both of them glanced at me, grinning. Ignoring them, I walked into the meeting room, my face betraying nothing. At this meeting, we'll award the top 3 stores based on performance, and they'll share their experiences. None of the top 3 is the main store. After I joined the branch, I led it to achieve the second best sales. Just as I was about to share my experience on stage, I noticed everyone looking surprised, staring at the screen behind me. The projector was showing something from Mike's computer. He tried to hold back laughter and exclaimed, "Oh my gosh, I totally showed the wrong thing, my bad." It was a few screenshots of chats suggesting I was flirting with Ruby's rich friend, and Ruby seemed to be questioning me about it. I couldn't help but scoff internally. It's not like she had time to Photoshop anything. Then, Mike said something with a not-so-subtle hint. "Manager, I won't hold a grudge against you for what you did to my girlfriend, but how did you become manager and get such good sales so quickly? Was it all legit?" With gossip about the dealership swirling, people quickly connected the dots from what Mike said and the screenshots, chiming in with comments like, "I thought he really had skills. Turns out it was just looks. Saw him arguing with some girl outside, no wonder I got a bad vibe. This guy shouldn't be a branch manager." Everyone was pointing fingers at me, exactly what Ruby and Mike wanted. In the corner of my eye, I saw someone at the door laughing so hard they shook. But next second, she stopped laughing. A group of people kicked the meeting room door open, yelling, "Which one's Mike? Get out here." Mike's face turned pale. He instinctively clutched his laptop, ready to bolt, but I'd anticipated this and sat right next to him. I grabbed him before he could get away. Ruby, still clueless, pulled the big guys over and said, "What do you want with my boyfriend? His family has a dozen houses. Money's not an issue." The leader chuckled at this. "Money's not an issue? He used our money to show off everywhere. How shameless is that?" Ruby froze. They spotted Mike huddled in the corner and one of them grabbed him by the collar, saying, "Heard you're living large. New Porsche, new phone number 2. Trying to skip out on your debt?" Mike, shaking, pleaded, No, listen to me, I didn't mean not to pay." Everyone watched this unfold, and they weren't blaming me anymore. The leader snorted. "Yeah, right. If you hadn't come back to this dealership, we'd never have found you." I chimed in, "This has nothing to do with our dealership." "Mike, I'm announcing you're fired." Ruby finally caught on and shrieked, "John, who do you think you are? Mike's the head store manager, you can't fire him." I smiled, "Because he's my son." Everyone glanced at the man sitting at the head of the table. "My dad." He casually confirmed it, looking pleased. People caught on quick. I continued, "Mike, you relied on your initial company performance to become the head store manager. But you didn't improve. You brought your girlfriend here, slacking off. The head store's performance has been behind many branches. Also, there are some financial discrepancies on the head store's books. Care to explain these unauthorized expenses? And using a few edited chat screenshots to smear me? There's security footage in the garage. Should I show evidence of your infidelity and stealing my parking space?" Mike and Ruby turned pale. Everyone's phones buzzed. They saw the materials I'd prepared. Clear logic and evidence. Clicked. I almost believed them. But it was the girl cheating and stealing spaces? Shameless. The real boss was right here, and I insulted him. Hope I don't get fired. Ruby stood there, disbelief washing over her face, mixing with regret. The group prepared to take Mike away, and he cried out, "Don't take me. I'll find the money, I promise." Ruby brightened, "Mike, you still have that apartment worth millions. That should cover it." I chuckled, "Oh, sorry, that's my property." And Mike, "Haven't you missed 2 months' rent? Yet you occupied my parking spot, tried to steal my girlfriend, and now you and yours make trouble? The apartment is mine, so you better move out in 3 days. You're on your own." Ruby stood there, shell-shocked, shaking her head in disbelief. "Impossible. The property manager said someone bought nearly an entire building." "How?" Finally, she turned to me, completely stunned. I smiled wider. That person's me. When I first met Mike, I knew right away he'd be my tenant. But before, it was always my mom who handled the agreements and collected the rent from the tenants. I never got involved, so it was normal for Mike not to recognize me. I thought about calling the property manager to deal with the parking spot issue that day, but Mike just cursed a little and then drove away. At that time, I had no idea he used to work for my dad. It wasn't until after Ruby cheated that I remembered Mike's car from 2019 and realized it looked familiar. I hired a private investigator to check him out. Turns out Mike was actually one of the top salespeople for a while. This 2019 Panamera had a major accident, and it was only passed around among the staff. Mike, for his own selfish desires, used part of his savings and a loan to buy the car. Later, he quit his job and spent his time at nightclubs, getting lost in the attention from various women. The reason his Porsche was parked in my space for 3 days without a trace of him was that our schedules were completely opposite. Every time I tried to find him, he was asleep. However, Mike didn't consider his ability to repay the loan when he bought the car. With repeated overdue reminders from the bank, he ended up borrowing from loan sharks to pay off the debt. To pay off the debt, he returned to my dad's dealership. It's a pity, though. He's not the type of person who deserves another chance. Those debt collectors only found him because I gave them a tip-off. Originally, without Ruby's self-righteous photo edit, I only planned to make him quit. But since they provoked me, there's no way I was going to let them leave with dignity. Ruby unleashed her frustration on Mike. She accused him of deceiving her, which cost her the chance to be with me, the real rich guy, only to end up cheating with him who was deeply in debt. After venting, she fell to the ground in a mess. Everyone heard what I just said, and they now knew about Ruby's affair and how they had been occupying my parking spot. They all looked at her with disdain. Under all those judgmental eyes, she crawled to my feet, sobbing uncontrollably. John, I know I'm wrong. I really loved you the most, but I got swayed by Mike's sweet talk. You know, I come from a rural background, and money means a lot to me. I know you still love me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gone through so much trouble against us. Can we start over? I kept a calm demeanor. Actually, the night Mike and I had that parking dispute, I accidentally saw her chat with her friend. She said, I met a neighbor with a Porsche today. I intentionally spoke loudly. I wonder if he noticed me. Reading that made me uncomfortable, but I didn't doubt Ruby's loyalty at the time. I thought she was just joking around. But now I see I was wrong. I replied calmly, Ruby, the day I found out you cheated, I was actually going to propose to you. My parents had approved of our relationship, and since I promised to marry you, I definitely intended to keep that promise. Her tears got heavier, with a brief glint of hope in her eyes. When you yelled at Mike, those words were spot on. You're pretty smart, you know? The loan sharks, who almost made Mike wet his pants, took him away while my dad called security to remove Ruby. Before she was dragged off, I threw in one last line. But now I'm not picking up the trash. Her last bit of hope shattered completely. For a long time after that, I didn't see either of them again. But since Mike's loan was through illegal channels, I reported it to the police as soon as the loan sharks took him. After my secret identity was revealed, I couldn't just stay as a small branch manager. So I started taking on more responsibilities at the company. 3 years flew by. During this time, I slowly built my dad's used car dealership into a recognized brand. Our collaboration on a used car app was also about to launch nationwide. I truly expanded and strengthened my dad's business. In the process, I met a woman who captivated me. She was a software director at a company I partnered with. After pursuing her for a while, we fell in love. Meanwhile, I got an invitation for a college reunion. On the day of the reunion, I went with my girlfriend. But to my surprise, at the entrance, we ran into a disheveled Ruby. She was sobbing as she approached us, only to freeze when she saw my girlfriend. She looked incredulous. John, you said you'd love me forever. How did you move on so quickly? I wasn't interested in engaging with her. I just wanted to leave with my girlfriend. I couldn't understand how she had the nerve to question me like that, knowing she made all those promises too, only to cheat because of a car. Unexpectedly, when I ignored her, Ruby grabbed my pant leg and dropped to her knees. My girlfriend was startled. I quickly reassured her. Ruby was crying her eyes out. John, I know we'll never go back to the way we were, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But Mike recorded videos when we were together. He's threatening me with them to pay his debts or he'll send them to my parents. You know my parents are old and live in the countryside. They couldn't handle such a shock. Your family is well off. I beg you, give me some money. Please help me. As she spoke, she even tried to bow her head. My girlfriend couldn't take it. She helped Ruby up. I could feel when my girlfriend touched her. Ruby's whole body went stiff. My girlfriend casually said, I've heard of you. I'm sorry about what you've been through, but John can't help you with this. The police can. You need to report this and protect your privacy. Money doesn't grow on trees. To us, you're just a stranger right now. Even if we loaned you money, it would only be a temporary fix. Only the police can really help you out. I quietly held my girlfriend's hand, feeling happy inside. Ruby glanced up at her, her eyes showing a mix of emotions, with a hint of reluctance. But the next moment, to everyone's surprise, Mike came out of nowhere, waving a knife and charging at us. He shouted, John, you ruined me. Ruined my life. You need to die. At the critical moment, Ruby stepped in front of me. The knife plunged into her chest, and she was instantly bleeding profusely. Mike looked utterly panicked, unbelieving that he had just killed his girlfriend. He lost it, drove his Panamera wildly down the street, crashing into cars. Ruby died. Mike was charged with murder and damaging several vehicles, receiving a death sentence, which was carried out after settling his debts. Later, my girlfriend asked me, even though Ruby made a lot of mistakes before, she saved your life. Will she leave a deep mark in your heart? I paused and said, I'm grateful she saved me, but it was all her choice. I don't feel sorry for her. Besides, now I have you. How could there be anyone else in my heart? My girlfriend, satisfied with my answer, smiled and hugged me. Because of the sudden turn of events, our class gathering was canceled last time. But when we rescheduled, I went with my girlfriend. The class president looked at me apologetically, saying, Sorry, John. I didn't invite Ruby last time, but I forgot to block her from seeing the location post in the group. I grinned. No worries, it's all in the past. If you feel that bad, buy a used car from me. The old classmates laughed, saying I've become much more diplomatic over the years, unlike my stubborn old self. I didn't deny it. The steps of growth are closely linked. If Ruby hadn't cheated, I might not have worked hard on my dad's business or met my wonderful girlfriend. I'm thankful for every choice I made back then. As we all toasted, there were fireworks outside celebrating something unknown. Watching the brilliant fireworks outside and my smiling girlfriend by my side, everything felt perfect. Everything felt full of life and renewal.